I used to give a lot of demonstrations on skills that might have been used by Puebloans or pre-Puebloan groups that they call Anasazi or Hisatsunam. The corn bean and squash people, pre-Hopi, pre-Zuni, their ancestors. And I was teaching something in back of a museum called Anasazi State Park in Boulder, Utah. And I would teach the same class about every 15 minutes because you got people coming through. And this one woman who looked Apache to me, not that I just thought she looks like a lot of Apaches I know. There's a little bit different than Navajo, but a lot of them are intermarried, so it's hard to tell. And I kept noticing that she wasn't talking, but she wasn't leaving. And finally, there was a gap where there's nobody coming. And she said, "Sir, I'm adopted by a family from California when I was little, and I don't know what tribe I'm from. But could you tell by looking at me what I might be? Because you just seem to know a lot. And I feel safe with you. I feel connected to you somehow." And I said, "Well, I was thinking that you look Apache, but let me explain. Everybody in every culture is intermarried enough that we're all part something else. And so I don't know."
Yeah.
And I said, the Apaches and the Navajos at one point had no women as they came, the Athabascans moving down. They couldn't marry their cousin, they couldn't marry their sister, they couldn't marry a clan relative. So they're stuck with stealing wives. And that's part of their story. That's not a hidden thing. And so you could be part Puebloan really easy, because that was the easiest group to thieve, because their girls were always going out to do chores and go get water and stuff. So a lot, and they were pretty, and a lot of people still sing, Navajo still sing songs about Hopi girls, So there's a lot of intermarriage between all groups, because just like in our world, we all came from someplace else.
Move somewhere.
And we fell in love with who we loved. So that's just all over the planet. That's normal. So people that claim to be purebloods probably just don't know their ancestry very far back.
Right.
So she said, "Well, let me tell." So then I gave her gave her confidence, and she started crying. She says, "Well, I was at Chaco Canyon one time, which used to be kind of the governmental center of the Hisatsunam or Puebloan world, the pre-modern Puebloan world, the old Puebloan world." And she said, "I was at Chaco Canyon, and I looked up into the sky when nobody was around, and I don't know if you've been there, but all the walkways are paved, and all the artifacts are gone. They went and gathered them up so people won't step off and pick stuff up. So there's no pottery, no chips, no nothing, and paved walkways so we don't disturb the soil." And she says, "I prayed to God, am I any way, I feel like I came from here possibly. Could I have come from here? Could my oldest female relative come from here? Because that's a matriarchal society, right?" And she said this voice told her, "What do you need from me to believe that I've given you an answer?" And she said, "I don't know, like maybe a turquoise bead." It's a tall order.
Give me a turquoise
Give
bead.
me a turquoise bead and I'll know. So she said she took a few more steps down the trail, and there was a turquoise bead just sticking out of the dirt under a sagebrush or a salt bush. And she stepped off the trail and said, "Thank you." And then she said, like all good old Jewish prophets, "Are you sure that's all? Are you sure? Well, I'll make you a better deal. To really know for sure that this one's what you meant to say, give me another one."
A bigger one.
Yeah. "Okay, if you're only going to if you won't nuke the town for 50 righteous people, well, how about 40? Well, how about 30? How about 5? How about 1? So you're always working and the old thing, that what they're teaching is that we can have a conversation. Not that it's bad to ask, it's just know who you're talking to and why, and then act like he's your dad.
Yeah.
Say, "Can I have the keys to the Lamborghini?" "No, but I'll give you the Volkswagen." "Oh, how about $40? All right, 30.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to be making fun of anybody, because I am a French Jew on my mom's side. So I'm talking about my own people, right? Anyway, way back when, like back, after they left Jerusalem,
Yeah.
they went to the Pyrenees. Luckily, slid down the north side of the Pyrenees and
Slid down the mountain.
didn't end up in Spain, where being a Jew was a big trouble after a while.
Mm.
Anyway, so we're French Jews from that lineage. We have a lot of, in our genetics, we have some Middle Eastern markers, if you want to be polite, if you're afraid of, if you're anti-Semitic. You know, anyway, back to the story. She took a few more steps and found another turquoise bead. And then she was crying. She says, "What do you think that means?" I said, "What do you mean? What do you think that means?" Ma'am, you know, you can be Apache or whatever else and still have your oldest female line come from somebody that wasn't.
Right.
In fact, I said, I've seen Navajo girls, beautiful Navajo girls, and then I've been in Mexico City at the Anthropological Museum of the Mexica culture and seen obsidian and jade masks, and it's exactly the same face, as if there's repetitive genetic patterns. That people, either a princess from way down there was captured by the Mexicas and taken there to be somebody's, fourth wife or whatever, a queen, or the other way around, that the Navajos aren't as pure as they think, and some of what you would call the wandering people, the Nakai, maybe somebody's related to that same person who that mask was made from, because pretty girls are wanted everywhere, and so are pretty boys. Mm-hmm. So are strong, capable humans. Mm-hmm. And so that powerful look keeps showing up over and over again, just like when you're looking at somebody's puppy, and it sure looks a lot like the puppy that I had, and you find out it's from the same type,
area.
same area. Yeah. And so we're all the great grandkids of a lot less smaller gene pool as you go back far enough.
Yeah.
So certain beautiful and powerful and functional traits that make it successful on planet Earth, they keep repeating themselves, and those that aren't just keep disappearing. So that's two stories about miracles that somebody else could say that's all just in your head. And I say, well, you keep your head and I'll keep mine, but let's talk to each other about what we really think and feel. And here's one thing I know: a lot of scientists who believe in nothing but science get really scared and lonely when they're on their deathbed. And my mom and lots of other people that believed, they saw their parents come to them, hold their hands, and say, "Come with us." And then they died and came back and said told me what they saw. And I said, I think I believe my mom. I died and saw something last December, and I know what I saw, and I believe it's true. So I think it's better to believe in experiential knowledge than it is to believe in a religion or a science that you've never experienced
just
personally.
Some book that you're just taking for.
Yes. So I don't like it when people make up answers to fit in. I like it when people find answers and then hold to that truth, regardless of who messes with them. And I'm talking about having an experience that seals it. That lady knew that she was answered, but she even doubted it after that. We're so prone to be told we're supposed to doubt. I've had friends that went to their missions, like I did in Kansas. They did theirs in South America. And they said every tribal person they talked to, when they walked up to them and knocked on their door and said they want to talk about God, they go, "Oh, I know God. He was a shining light in the jungle. I saw him last week. He came up to me, and did you meet the Virgen de Guadalupe? She's always here for us." So certain groups have a spiritual life, and they don't know much about modern things, but they know that the nature and their spiritual life is functional and works, and they're connected. And then these people that don't believe in any of that, who are very disconnected from their children, themselves, and their own personal feelings, but they know a lot. They have a lot of information stored up, and they've learned it since they were young, and they know it's accurate because it's the prevalent scientific theory of the day. And I read a lot of magazines on science, so pretty soon you live all up in here and you got nothing going on. And you start feeling disconnected and sad, wonder why your kids are committing suicide per capita more than anybody else in the world. Why are your soldiers committing suicide more than anybody else in the world per capita? Well, that should be a sign, if you're looking for a sign, that you're way off track.
Something's off.
Way off track. And so I say that false religion can cause just as much trouble as false science. And then false reasons for believing in either one in the individual can still add one more layer of hypocrisy and deception. But true faith and true religion and true science should be ethical approaches to looking for data that supports not your ideas, but supports an understanding of how things might be working here.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaving it wide open. What's the beginner's mind? Okay, I know this so much, this so far, but there's the people that go, well, why? And there's people that go, what? A Native American man told me one time, white people are screwed up and mixed up because they're always asking why, when our cultures always ask what. So what's an example? Why is this happening to me? Or what can I learn from this?
What can I do to solve the problem?
not even solve the problem.
Yeah.
What can I learn from this?
Uh-huh.
It's a whole different thing. Or why is there mosquitoes? Or what are the mosquitoes teaching us? Or what do mosquitoes do?
Mm-hmm.
Science says, let's study the mosquito. Somebody else takes the information and says, what can we do to make a bunch of money off this information?
Mm-hmm.
So, as much as most little kids don't want to hear this, Einstein did not invent the bomb. He came up with a mathematical equation that inspired others to build a bomb and kill a whole bunch of people. Einstein cried and was totally discouraged and went off by himself when he heard what they'd done with his knowledge. He said, we did it. We dropped the bomb. They said, we did it. We dropped the bomb. And they said, Einstein goes, oh no, or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't quote it. I wasn't there. But they say so much goes on in our world that's not provable. And I say, okay, well, let's look for data, and then let's don't interpret the data too fast. Let's just collect it and see if we can somehow find some replicable patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So I know God, not real close. I think he's kind of leaves me way out on the edge some days on purpose, because I need to do. If you don't do the last 10 things somebody asks you to do, why should they keep giving you more information?
Mm-hmm.
If you're ignoring somebody long enough, maybe they should let you figure it out and then come back. So there's times when I get really good information, like brush your teeth, and then I don't do it for 10 days in a row. And I go to bed late at night knowing I should get up and go. I lay down and then remember to brush my teeth. But it's all about using your courage to move forward. And it's that next step that matters, not how far along you are.
How do you think that you've so based on that, it takes strength to be able to do the right thing?
Yeah, it does.
So,
it takes courage.
Courage and strength to do the right thing. How do you think
and that's not physical. That's all just well,
spiritual, emotional
desire to improve your life and to be honest.
So you've made your entire living basically off of survival-esque activities.
Pretty
for
much.
the most part.
I worked construction. I worked in gold mines.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of stuff. I taught environmental education and Arizona history and prehistory for K through 12 programs. It was probably the best job I ever had in the Tucson Unified School Districts, which had back then like 14 middle schools, 18 high schools, and 73 elementary schools. And so I had a real job once, a long time ago in the 80s, but it was all teaching the same subject. And I even dropped the G word once in a while illegally. Meaning I just would say there's a lot of interpretations on how we got where we are, and there's this religious interpretation and the scientific interpretation, a lot of mixes, a lot of different religions. So I'd just say the G word. I called it that. And I was also not supposed to hug anybody, and I hugged every little kid that looked like he needed a hug. I told them, fire me. You know, I hug in public. I hug lots of people, pretty girls even, in public when there's 500 people watching, but I'll never do it alone when nobody's watching. And I trust myself, so just because nobody else trusts each other doesn't mean I'm going to spend my life cold and frozen and imbalanced because it's inappropriate. Because right now the inappropriate people that are saying what's inappropriate are some of the most inappropriate people I've ever met in my life, yet they're saying that they're in charge of what's appropriate or not. Like, who's in charge of that? Every individual. So I'm going to rant on this for a second. If I run into a certain type of bush, and I think that because I'm a human, I can just rip it out of the ground, I call that inappropriate. But if I wanted to have an appropriate relationship with that bush, I might want to sit with it for a while and learn about its life cycle and find out what type of interaction it needs to thrive. So inappropriate behavior for one plant is very different than appropriate behavior for another plant. So like I said yesterday about pioneer species, they need to be eaten, thrashed, and used.
They need to be ripped out.
If you don't use them, they die.
Yeah.
Where climax species need to be left alone, and if you do, when they're mature, they start giving, like a saguaro. But you don't mess with them when they're babies. You don't stomp on them with cows. You don't run them over with a truck. Just leave them alone. And when they're about 100 years old, they start giving the most delicious fruits ever. So they need to be treated differently than a rabbit brush, which if you leave it too long, or a willow, they'll climax and that will die out. But if you use them, they'll get fertile and beautiful and green because they have 300-year-old root systems that need to get rid of the hair. So you're giving them a haircut so that their split ends will end and they'll grow more hair.
Right.
But it's not, it looks like the living part should be left alone because we don't want to harm anything. But certain people like me want to get into the middle of the mosh pit. I'm better off when I'm hugged and talked to and loved. And other people just need to be given their space. They don't want that. So I don't hug everybody. But I usually want to.
Most people.
I want to kiss everybody on the bus. I don't want to have sex with everybody. I want to have sex with my wife.
Yeah.
I love her. But I want to be open and honest and have a hug anytime anybody wants one. And so I get accused of, being inappropriate by people who are afraid of everything and think that I'm looking to get something from them that they don't want to give. And I'm like, sorry, I misinterpreted your life cycle, and you're the kind that needs to be left alone. But I'm hoping someday when you relax and learn that hugging's really healthy for human beings. So just because you were abused when you were little or know somebody that was, doesn't mean everybody else should start walking around acting like abused people. Because sometimes the best medicine is dropping that and moving forward, right? So I'm not pushing my agenda on anybody, but that's what I meant by that.
Sure.
Is that if you learn about somebody first, and so I've learned to back off a little in my old age and just know that I really love them and wish I could show them the way I know. But how do they need to be shown how they're loved, how you love them? So that's taken a lot more intelligence and wisdom that didn't come natural to me growing up. I was the puppy that thought everybody wants my muddy feet on their white carpet because I'm just running to the couch because you're on it and I love you. And so I probably caused a lot of shiest in my day, just trying to be myself. And everybody else has been doing the same, and we grow up and we learn. But some people aren't being themselves at all, and I feel sorry for them. I still think it's the best way to go.
People
is to
pretending out.
genuinely show up, and then work on your crap from where you're really at, and trust other people to help you along the way, rather than always be like, "Sup."
Yeah.
That comes from fear.
Standoffish.
Standoffish. That comes from fear. That doesn't mean everybody has to be like each other. I'm just saying not everybody's coming from fear, but sometimes it is. It's like, I grew up in a dangerous neighborhood, and you say too much and somebody's listening, and the next thing you know, they're ripping you off or raping you or whatever because they've found out enough to use you. So you just don't say anything and they never know. You don't know if I got a gun. So you go to certain places and you do this under your coat and everybody leaves you alone.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a safe place, in a place where people get hurt all the time.
Maybe to sum it up, like, what do you think
Did I answer both of your questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So
Okay.
just to, in order for people to become spiritually, emotionally, and physically stronger, do you have any words of wisdom, things that have gotten you through really tough challenges? I mean, I've heard some of your stories about some of the things that you've endured, and no question that they were physically, emotionally, and spiritually challenging. And if you could give some advice to somebody that will potentially have to go through something like that, what would it be? How can we prepare for that? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to faith. One thing is to learn everybody's story that you can. Listen to people who've had a much harder time than you. Mm-hmm. Listen to the key points that they talk about that got them through. Read all those books about people that failed. Read about successes. Nurture in yourself and others around you the best you can. To be honest. Because then if you're not honest and you think everyone else is lying, then you're just scamming all your life, trying to get what you need, but never telling the truth and think everybody else is doing the same. That's hell. So you could be a real snake taker bad boy and walk into a church where all the old ladies love everybody and think you're just okay, and they think you're good too because that's how they see everybody. Or you could be somebody that's a really good person and gets put in a jail cell full of those same guys, and they think, we know you're just like us. Drop your phony act.
Good friend. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, so when people put their own filter on everything they see, they end up not seeing the big picture. Mm-hmm. I say that hearing stories about others who've made it, mm-hmm. that have had a worse time than you, is encouraging.
Mm-hmm. It can be done.
This life is doable. Mm-hmm. Okay? And whether you believe in what I believe in or not, look for successful stories or successful people that have gone through what you're going through. That's why AA works. That's why lots of things work. Mm-hmm. Is find friends that know who you are and what's happened to you and are up the trail from you. Because you can't guide somebody someplace you've never been, or you can't pull out of your pockets and give it to somebody something you don't have. So if you don't have it and you know it, see if somebody that has it will give it to you, or at least show you where to find it. So I think our best help in the universe is the one who created us. And so here's a thought that a horse trainer gave to a lot of us a couple of years ago, a guy named Hugh. He said, don't whine or complain about your weaknesses, because you were born with them and they are gifts to teach you to grow and become strong in those places. But don't brag about your accomplishments and your qualities, mm-hmm. because they were gifts given to you so you could make it through this life. Mm-hmm. So everything about you that you started with, that you didn't accomplish by trying to make it happen in your life, was either overcoming a weakness or strengthening a strength.
Right.
And then expanding out from there. I love the Maria Montessori approach of strength-based education, which means I'm no good at math, but I love art, so I'm going to draw some pictures. And then one day my teacher says, would you like to put that on a frame? Sure. Well, let's build the frames. Okay. Well, let's get out the tape measure and the pencil. And pretty soon I'm doing math because I like it. Or I'm a boy that doesn't want to do anything but shoot guns, and pretty soon I want to learn about trajectory and ballistics. Yeah. And pretty soon I'm doing trigonometry. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Didn't know it. So take your strengths, get into them, and let them lead you to the next thing you need to know. So pretty soon I'm doing math because I'm counting all the money from selling my paintings. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, oh, math. And then maybe way in the deeper end of it, since everything's made out of the same size of molecules and atoms, It's all kind of a mathematical equation that art and math are the same thing. There's no separation. Pretty soon, my left brain and my right brain are going, oh, the answers are all right here in me and around me at all times. And when you start believing that, you might start acting silly to some people, but you start having a fun life. So I'd say most of all, try to have as much fun as you can that doesn't take from someone else. Don't be a pirate. Be Santa Claus. Right?
Give freely.
Give what you got. And that's hard when you don't got much and you're clinging because you grew up in a bad situation. But eventually there's this joy of not being afraid anymore. And I was really afraid. And I had a lot of self-doubt. Lots. I didn't come to the man you're talking to right now for free. And it's worth the effort. I tried to kill myself once over Kathy Paul cheating on me, my girlfriend I loved. I'd be with her today. I'd be sitting with her right now in a rocking chair, loving my woman, if she just loved me or not cheated on me or whatever. But when she cheated on me, I tried to kill myself. Well, I gave it my best shot. I was really good. I was strong, and I did not be lazy. It was a momentary bad thought, but it was out of evil thinking of she's going to find out how much she matters to me when I'm dead. I'll show her that I loved her by killing myself because she hurt me, that she was everything to me. Well, I'm really glad I failed. And that's not love. That's a selfish, pay you back, revenge love. And some people still live in that. I'll show you how much I care. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you worse by destroying myself. That's only one reason for committing suicide, but that was mine. So I gave it the best attempt I could. I won't get into the details, but I failed. Not because of lack of a great idea and a great effort. Just had a body that didn't cooperate.
Too strong of a body.
Or
Thank God
yeah,
you didn't.
my
You
dad,
weren't
my
successful.
mom gave me the power at birth to not go that way at that age. But also there could have been an intervention because I've seen that happen a lot too. I have a son that tried to hang himself and the rope broke. But he was a smart, strong kid who could have done it. A buddy of his had just done the same thing not too long earlier. Marine, beautiful young man, and his rope didn't break and he died. So who's here and who isn't? Sometimes it's hard to say why. I think sometimes there is intervention, and sometimes I think you get exactly what you aim for. So if I'm not going around about it too much, if you aim for the best in this universe, which is listening to the beings who created you and the people who love you the most, and then applying the things that actually work, that have been proven for generations, and then making up a new few innovations on that are current ways to do the same old, then you're going to have a beautiful, blessed, and powerful life. But if you keep fighting every good idea, so I'm going to do it my way, you're going to get what you aim for, and it might not be all that great. So, Black Elk was in Europe with the Wild Bill Hickok show or the Buffalo Bill Cody show or something. And he went in to see what other people did for religion, and he went into a cathedral and he saw Jesus hanging on the cross, all bloody with the thorns and spikes and everything. And he looked up and he said, "Oh, he's a sun dancer. That's what we do. We give our flesh and our lifeblood for the people because we love our people. We will sacrifice part of our lives for 4 days so that the next year will be good for our people." And then it hit him. He said he had a vision because he was very visionary, very religious in his own Lakota way, beautiful Lakota way, but he had experiential understanding. Didn't believe in his Lakota way. He'd seen things other people hadn't, so he had a spiritual life. So when he saw Jesus on the cross, all of a sudden Jesus came to him and said, "Yes, I'm the sun dancer for all the clans, the white clan, the black clan, the red clan, and the yellow clan, and all the racial mixes of those 4 colors." which adds up to like 12 or 16 basic human types. Yes, I sundanced for everyone. And my people didn't know who I was, so they killed me. But because I had done the right ceremonies and lived the right way, I was able to take my life back to show that death is not the end. And the Lakota already knew that. That's why they could give themselves in battle and everything else, because they knew death is not the end, because they had connections with their relatives. So Christians came along and said, you're all heathens. Any spirit you see is a ghost of an evil thing, not right. There's no way, because of some scriptures in the Bible that I believe they've totally misinterpreted. Some, I'm not going to call the Christians, I'm saying certain Christian groups have used biblical information, misinterpreted, to say that there is no afterlife until the resurrection. All other spirits you see are evil spirits. Mm-hmm. And that they're all ways to lead you away from Christ. That's the Christian mainstream thought. And Black Elk said, no. Jesus came to me and told me that in order to help my ancestors, past, present, and future, I need to take on this Jesus way. That it's not the death war God that we were told by our parents, because they came to kill us. And Jesus is a powerful God, and that's why we're losing. Jesus told him when he was in Europe, I'm real, my people misinterpreted me. And so he went back and started preaching the good red road, which is the way to God. And he said also he learned that his mother, Mary, had also appeared earlier to his people before she came, or right after she came as Mary. She came as White Buffalo Woman. She taught the people how to be kind. And
because he
knew who she was.
They could relate to
right.
that. Yeah.
And then the people in Mexico saw her. And the Pope didn't agree, so they said it wasn't real. Mm-hmm. But there's so many people all over the earth that can come to that light on their own, because it's not on their own. Those beings that love them are always helping them. So you can find the truth and light and life of this world out of your own traditions if you can look deep enough. Mm-hmm. But if you're always the kind that just does what you're told or rebels against everything you're told, you'll probably not get there. So if you do it because everybody says so, or you never do it because everybody says so, those types of Casper milk toasts and rebels are always throwing away the best presents they're given. And I've been both, and I am both still. But once in a while, God actually intervenes, tells me something, or some person comes along and says, you know, David, why are you always seeking the darkness and the ignorance of this way when right in front of you has been some really good things? Like Peter Bigfoot always said, why do you always seek darkness when the light's right in front of your face? And I'd like, what do you mean, man? I'm cool. I'm doing good. And then 2 years later, I'd go, oh, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter, for being an older person who sees me and knows how silly I look from that perspective, but loves me anyway and tells me the truth rather than, he'll figure it out someday. Mm-hmm. So, quick answer, there is a God, and you are being supported. And if you'll pray with all the faith you have and all the might you have, you'll get answers, and you'll be able to recognize that, and then you got to say, okay, now I got to do something. And that's the scariest part of all. And we can be lazy about our path. We can fall asleep. We can fight it. We can be really gung-ho and miss the path. Is there any film left on this? Because I got one more story to tell you. When I was trying to be a faithful young man and I'd changed my ways and I'd left Kathy, who I loved with all my heart, and I didn't know she was an alcoholic, cocaine addict, prostitute at the time, or using her body to get coke. Well, so I didn't know that I left her because of anything she was doing wrong. I left because I wanted to serve God, and I loved Kathy, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But she didn't know it either, that she was already a really serious addict. So she went her trail, I went mine. But right before I was going to go on my mission, it wasn't for my church, it was because God called me. I don't try to put my church down. I'm just saying it. I wouldn't have done it for that. I did it for God. God gave me a dream, and this is the dream. I'm walking along in the sand dunes of southern Utah, which I hadn't even been to before, but I recognize the dream now. A bunch of juniper trees and sagebrush and sand dunes, pinkish sand dunes. And I'm walking along, and I see some tracks, some human tracks, I think. And then this voice that sounds like all the universe talking, like many rivers talking, and all knowing from inside and out goes, those are my tracks. It's God telling me that I just found his tracks. And I'm like, yay! All I gotta do is follow these tracks. And it's easy to track in a sand dune unless a windstorm comes up. I can follow these tracks and I can find God. Is there anything better on the universe than that? Than be able to meet the person who created this place? So I'm following God's tracks, and I'm so happy about my discovery. I start thinking, hey, wouldn't it be neat if everybody could know where these tracks are? I'm going to help out. I'm going to show them where they are. And I did the classic thing you're not supposed to do in search and rescue. I started putting my feet right in his feet tracks. Isn't that the right way to go? Walk in the footsteps of your creator. And then I think whoa, this trail could get obliterated by wind or something. Maybe I ought to make it deeper. So I started dragging my feet on purpose to make the way really strong.
Easy to find, yeah.
And what I didn't know until years later is that I was obliterating the trail. And it all ended up being my excitement about serving God and serving others was more important than what I was actually supposed to be doing. And so you're supposed to show the way. Jesus always stepped out of the way and said, no, don't worship me. It's my Father that you need to get to know. Well, in my book, at that point, I thought I was doing the right thing in this dream. I'm making it easier to find God by deepening the trail, obliterating the evidence, as if you can't get to God unless you follow what I'm doing to help find God. Well, I didn't know all that. This is years later interpretation I'm giving you now of that dream. But what did happen in that dream is God was hiding behind a cedar tree, a juniper tree. And I got to, in like dreams can do, I got to pull out of me and watch me.
See it, yeah.
And God says, come here. And I stand next to God, and we watch David Holladay
Look
go
at this
by.
idiot.
And then he goes, aren't my kids something? And we're both laughing, like, because I was so busy watching my feet do the good work of God that I didn't even notice that the trail ended. And if I'd have followed his footsteps, I'd have found him under the tree.
Yeah.
So and then I woke up and realized that missionary work of all religions is often people really excited about themselves and what they're doing for others and have no connection with where God is at all. It's a storyline they learned, or, in my case, in our church, we get young men who go on their missions that don't know God or the church, but their parents tell them, our family's always gone on missions, and we own the Christensen Chevrolet dealership in Salt Lake City. And if you'll go on your mission, I'll make you one of our fellows that you can sell out on the lot, and someday when I die, you can own Christensen Chevrolet. So what they're saying is, if you don't go on your mission, I'm not going to support you anymore, son.
Right.
And you grew up with a millionaire dad, and you want the car and the girlfriend, and no girl will date you if you don't keep up that. You get a lot more pretty girls with the right parts. Men have learned that if they get rich, pretty girls will date them, and women have learned that if they try to stay pretty, rich men will marry them. And so they're all missing each other and literally screwing each other's hearts to pieces rather than loving, because it's all about image. Right. And that's, I'm not going to blame anybody for doing that. That's a pretty simple, happy way to be. Some people actually learn to love each other and treat each other good, but if your motivations aren't pure, then you're not going to get a pure result. So without judging anybody, that's the dream that helped me understand the most, that just because I think it's a certain way, getting excited about what I'm doing and not watching the trail and the real signs will lead you way off the path. And I've been way off the path a lot of times according to other people's judgments. But when I followed God and he said, become a Quaker. And then he said, become a Presbyterian. And he said, go to El Salvador and serve. Go to nursing homes and serve. I thought I was still following God because I was following what I thought I could do that was simple enough that I didn't have to question the doctrine. Because doctrine always drove me nuts. So I started I stick with Jesus. And that's what Black Elk did, and that's what everybody else does that thinks about serving the people. God will use them if they're actually doing something good. But if their whole service is about themselves, then this is what I think people need, so I'm going to do it for them because it makes me feel good. I think you got to check in once in a while. Like, what am I always don't ask, why am I living like this? I ask God, what do you want me to do?
How do you know? How can you say?
How can you hear that voice?
No, well, that too. But what I mean is how can you know? What if something that you're doing for the people makes you feel really good? And how can you differentiate?
It's hard to tell sometimes. I always ask God, can we be a teammates instead of just me being a slave that you have to push around with a sharp stick or whip? Could I become a member of the team that's actually functioning and moving in the right direction for the right reasons and feel like I'm part of this rather than just somebody who's always begging for forgiveness and can't figure out what I did wrong this time? Because that's been a lot of people don't believe it in at all, and they just do their own thing, and sometimes they end up with really smart patterns that are functional and help everybody without being, you don't have to know God to serve God's purposes. A lot of atheists are much more ethical and honest, good people, and that's what the world needs. So God uses them to get good things done. So I don't know if we're in charge all the time of what gets done with us, but when you get to that point where you really want to be part of the team and work hard, you still doesn't mean you get there. You got to drop your stuff and go do what you're asked. And sometimes, like I said, the video game gets turned up to where, really? I got to give everything, my whole life up in order to make it to heaven? And if I try to do things I like, I'm basically avoiding the work. And then somebody else says, oh yeah, you think that you got to suffer to serve, but sometimes doing what you feel is right and it's fun actually is your calling.
Right.
So I've watched a lot of people that serve lots of people, and they start finding joy in what they're doing. So when they get an idea, like, hey, let's go get some ice cream, and they're happy about it, that they meet somebody at the ice cream shop that really needed them to be there that day.
Yeah.
And they're actually serving in a joyful and good way, not by saying, well, that's too fun, so I can't do that.
Yeah. I
So-
enjoy that too much.
I enjoy that too much, so that can't be of God. We got to whip ourselves with goads and suffer and fast. And Jesus got in trouble for partying with his buddies, drinking wine and eating lots of food. And when the Sadducees and Pharisees, all them folks judged him for it, he said, right now, I'm still here. It's time for us to celebrate my presence. There'll be enough hardship after I'm dead, and they'll end up, killing all of you. If you follow me, you're going to get killed for it. So I grew up wanting to do something so well that I got killed for it. And I'm still that guy. But I don't want to get killed just so I can say I did something. I want to do something so well that it pisses some power off. That says, we got to get rid of this guy because he's interfering with business, with the money-making Babylonian process of consuming people's lives for the benefit of a few. And so those are the guys that killed Jesus. It didn't stick. I believe that. I believe it doesn't stick on anybody. So like a good Sioux warrior or anybody else that believes in the afterlife, I can give my life. Martin Luther King had a nice, secure, happy upbringing, but he also believed in God and Jesus. And regardless of what everybody says his sins was, later, after they go through his life and say he couldn't have been a good man because look how many times he screwed up. Well, nobody's that good that they live a perfect life.
Yeah.
So you can get on Martin Luther King's case, but he did some amazing good things, but he gave his life knowing they would take it, not for a political statement, because he was serving God. And I don't care who else judges him on that. That's my story about him and lots of other people that have been fried lately including, if you have to be equal, let's just choose some white lady like that, Mary Queen of Scots or whoever else you want. Who's the most famous one? The French lady that all of her soldiers followed her to the death and they burned her at the stake. Marie Antoinette.
Oh,
Antoinette. So, if you need a lady, so I can be politically correct, a lot of men and women throughout history have served the people, but other people have lived their whole lives serving the people until they were old. So you don't have to copy somebody. Finding out what your mission is in life, or what you're good at and what you do well for people, and then just do that for others. Even if you don't know about religion at all, isn't that a good, smart pattern? Right? I'm excellent at generating wealth, so I'm going to share my wealth with others on projects that I think are beneficial to the people. I think these African villagers need to quit drinking mucky water. I'm going to pay for the wells and the people that go over and drill the wells for them and make some clean water, because I've got extra millions.
Right.
That's a really good use of your spare change, Mr. Millionaire. Me, I'd volunteer to go drill the well, or even just go be the project manager and pass out sandwiches. But we're all working as a team to get some clean water to a village. That'd be an example,
Sure.
right? It takes all sorts. So, they don't ask me to come to Africa and do anything, because I'm not a doctor, lawyer, and I got nothing they want. They need laborers and happy guys that like to sing and dance. Africa can do all that better than I ever.
They're good at
dreamt.
that, yeah.
They're already good at all things, to feel with your heart and sing with your heart and care. But maybe they need to meet a white guy that feels just like they do when their eyes are closed, and then maybe I need to go. Maybe they need to find a brother that they don't judge for the color of his skin. Right? So we don't know what we're doing sometimes when we're being ourselves. Sometimes just smiling keeps somebody alive.
Just smile.
I know a kid who said he's going to commit suicide if nobody smiles to me today. And some dang lady at the Circle K smiled at him,
Stopped him.
walked around the corner and hugged him.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Damn it, I was all ready to do it. Now I got to stay," because he was miserable. And he ended up in a youth program that I worked at called Anasazi.
Yeah.
In a drug rehab. And he told us that story around the fire one night, that he knew he could do it. He knew he had the power, and he was ready to rock. And that stupid lady walked around the counter after looking him in the eye, said, "Son, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And he kind of had his hoodie on, trying to hide his eyes. And she walked around, made me look her in the eyes, gave me a hug, and smiled, and let me know because I said, "God," he said, "if there's a God, and somebody doesn't smile at me and let me know I count at all today, I'm killing myself this afternoon when the sun goes down." And he walks at his promise the next day, right? He goes to the Circle K.
And that dang lady.
And that lady smiled at him and cared about him.
I've heard a lot of stories like that. Yeah.
Right. So, it doesn't
That's
have to be
crazy.
a big deal. It could be just treating people fair and smiling at them.
Just be good to people.
Be good to people.
Treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
Pretty hard some days.
Pretty hard sometimes.
Pretty hard sometimes.
All right. Well, I won't take any more of your time. I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me and be on film for me. I really do appreciate it.
It didn't even feel like we're being filmed. That's
No,
the
yeah,
it
that's the
felt
best
good.
part about
I'm talking
it.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed
You're
that
good
a lot.
you're good at this.
Well, thank you.
You're good at
No,
this.
I like to think I'm a good listener.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.